Yes, sir. How you all doing today? And welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. I hope you're all ready for this. We're a streaming show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, 8 to 10 a.m. every Wednesday through Sunday, with our platforms also on Instagram and Twitter. Like, comment, share, and subscribe when possible. Check out our great website at macandjack.com. The website is called Mac Sports Insiders. For information on all the insiders, articles, and team public relations updates, and our great sponsor links for their products and services. I'm Mac with your co-host Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association, bringing you nationwide sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. How are we doing today, Jack?
Doing well, Mac. How are you?
Hanging right in there. I mean, listen, it's I miss not being on these 2 days, but man, we need to recoup and do a lot of things behind the scenes, lining up guests, a little production and stuff like that, so that our show keeps growing and keeps getting better as we can. So let's go to the sports updates real quick. We have and this sports update is brought to you by Fanatics. Go to our website, macandjack.com. Check out their links. They have a bunch of things going on there. You can order gear from your favorite teams. We've got specials going on our website with Fanatics. So check out our website, click on their link, and go and get some of your team stuff. So anyway, so let's start with a little sports update. And of course, we're going to start off with Dallas losing to Baltimore 34-17. The Dallas run defense was terrible again, giving up 294 yards on the ground. Their kicker, Zerline, missed 3 field goals, Jack.
Those 3 missed kicks, were killers, because Dallas would have been in the thick of things late in the game. And the final score that the Ravens won by was a little bit deceiving. But had he made those 3 field goals, you can miss a kick once in a while, but to miss 3 of them were killers, especially since Dallas would go on time-consuming drives and then come up empty, nothing, and have nothing to show for it. That could really demoralize a team. And you saw Mike McCarthy, after one of the missed field goals, he just turned his back and he was walking down the sideline as if, he was beside himself.
Yeah, this guy is normally a good kicker too, Jack. Yeah. That does make a huge swing. When you miss something from 40 yards away, you're giving the other team good field position, and they capitalized. I think they capitalized all 3 times, Jack, with at least a field goal, if not more. So, big turning point. But, man, they got to do something about that Dallas run defense, especially going up against the Ravens, a healthy Jackson who ran for almost 100 yards. I don't know what to say about Dallas anymore. I really think I don't know if they're going to make any changes, or they just say, well, it's the COVID and it's the injuries, but they definitely are falling fast. Urban Meyer, citing health, is not returning to college football, Jack. He didn't say pro. He said college. And as we know, the Dallas Cowboys were interested in trying to get him as their head coach last year.
Well, the problem with Urban Meyer, he was a workaholic, which is good in some ways. In some ways it isn't. But he drove himself to the point where it really affected his health. He never had any time for his family. His family made him sign a contract that he was going to ease off during the time he was coaching at Ohio State. And whether he kept that or not, I guess he did, because he left coaching for a while at least. And let's see what Urban Meyer, once a coach, always a coach. You kind of have it in your blood. You want to get back, unless you're willing to let go completely. What was it that Bill Parcells said about Bill Belichick? someday he'll see there's more to life than just coaching. So coaches like Bill Belichick, Jimmy Johnson, who were absolutely obsessed, once they let go completely as far as their coaching bug goes. But it seems that Urban Meyer still has it in him. There's a little talk about Bill Cowher being maybe interested if the Jet position opened up. He
Yeah.
didn't say it directly, but when they felt him out about it, he kind of, tiptoed around it, meaning you're interested without saying you are.
Yeah, and I mean Bill Cowher, a very successful coach. There was talk of him wanting to go to the Giants when they had the coaching vacancy. So as you say, a lot of people, like sports athletes, like anybody that's been doing something for a long time, it's hard to stop, Jack, because it's your life. That's what you do 24/7, 365. Des Bryant pulled because of a COVID positive test during pregame, Jack. I mean, now that's pretty crazy. He went on later on Twitter saying that might be him for the year, Jack. So Des Bryant, the former Cowboy wide receiver, got a shot to play against the Cowboys and was pulled.
I'm going to give Des Bryant a pass. He shouldn't have gone on Twitter because he nearly went a little too far with what he was saying. Nearly, but not quite. He was really looking forward to this game, going against his old team, the Dallas Cowboys, being out of the league for 3 years. It looked like he never was going to play in the NFL again. And all of a sudden, he's back with the Ravens and in the national spotlight, a chance to show against the Cowboys. He could maybe still be an elite receiver. And all of a sudden, that chance was taken away from him justifiably. You have COVID, you can't be out there on the field. But he didn't understand why he was allowed to go out there for warm-ups and then get pulled.
Yeah, maybe that's something they should have just waited to do before they had him out there with the cameras, shooting him and stuff. I agree with that, Jack. Well, we got Hurts. He's starting Sunday, Jack. I mean, here we go. Wentz is pulled. Wentz is having a terrible year while the Eagles really are having a terrible year. I think a lot has to do with play calling as much as it does Hurts. I mean, as much as it does Wentz, but Hurts looked pretty good when he got sent in there. I mean, he did get sacked a few times, made some good plays, but he's starting this Sunday, Jack.
Mac, it's called fatigue. If you're the coach, you're the organization, and people keep asking you, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? There are only two ways to shut them up. Get results, that'll quiet them down, or do what they ask you to do. The Eagles obviously weren't getting results. These string of losses, these string of games where Carson Wentz wasn't performing well as the Eagle quarterback, kind of necessitated they finally give in to media and public pressure. And that's what they're doing. And we'll see whether it's the right move or not. Time will tell beginning on Sunday.
And the most impressive thing about that statement, Jack, that you made was you used the 4-syllable word, which I can't do. So next up, we have a Japanese pitcher. We talked about this with the doctor, Dr. Semendinger Komoyuki Sagano, is available for bidding now, Jack. Yankees have shown some interest in him. He's a big winner in Japan. So the Japanese team said he's available for bidding, Jack. What do you think is going to happen there? You think?
Oh, I don't know. The Yankees wanted Ohtani, who went to the Angels, who was a two-way player, pitcher and position player. I mean, that's unheard of these days. Are the Yankees going to bid on him? How much money are the Yankees going to lay out this offseason? They indicated they're going to target one free agent, DJ LeMahieu's at the top of their list, but they said they weren't going to go absolutely crazy in what they're going to offer. And I don't think this is going to be like past years with the Yankees. Yeah, they're going to be involved. They're going to spend some money, but they're not going to go crazy. I mean, fans have to realize there were no live gates last year. All that revenue was lost. The salaries, going to have to drop a little bit, or the team's going to have to lose a lot of money. That's why the Met fans could be absolutely ecstatic about Steve Cohen. He might be willing to lose a few $100 million more to get the team straight. But other teams, the owners might not be able to afford that. It just might not want to go that route.
Yeah, very true. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. I know the Yankees have signed a couple Japanese pitchers in the last few decades, so maybe they get out of it. Maybe the Dodgers get them, and the Dodgers. There's rumors, Jack, that the Dodgers are they're courting LeMahieu. The Yankees, it looks like, unwilling to go that 5 years. We'll see what happens with LeMahieu. Michigan cancels Ohio State game due to COVID. Now, this is going to bring up an interesting question because Ohio State hasn't been able to get a team to substitute for Michigan. So they're only going to have 5 wins. And according to their own league, you have to play at least 6 to be eligible to be in the championship for their division. And then after that goes on to the playoffs. Ohio State, we know, has a great team. We know that they have a great program. But how are you going to tell the other teams that played 13, 14 games that they're not eligible to get into the Final Four, but they're going to let Ohio State in?
Mac, I don't know what the answer is. Sometimes you just don't know what the solution is. This is a bizarre situation with the COVID. I would tell them it's not Ohio State's fault. They're doing everything they reasonably can do to get the games in, and the games are being pulled from them. It sometimes works that way. Some teams have to put out a little more than others because of the circumstances. That's what's creating an imbalance. I mean, they were 29-point favorites against Michigan. Everyone wanted to see the game because of the rivalry, but it looked like a mismatch in the making. And what would it have mattered had Ohio State, for example, had 3 extra games against mediocre competition who they rolled over and they padded their record? I mean, would that have made them more worthy for the playoffs? And I don't think we can enforce the rules or we should enforce the rules the same way as under normal conditions.
Well, Jack, it's the division's own fault. It really doesn't have anything to do with COVID. They decided not to play, then they decided to play, and now they played later than all the rest of the divisions. So, I mean, the reason why they have only 5 games is not just because of COVID. There was a decision they made about COVID, I guess you could say, roundabout.
Because of circumstances.
Right. So, I mean, to me, that was a decision made by their division. And why should we give Ohio State the go-ahead when you have other teams playing 14 games? I don't think it's fair. And I think in this year, especially in this year, they should kind of say, hey, listen, there's other teams like Florida and other teams that are really good out there. And, hey, they played the 13, 14 games. Let's let them in, maybe just for this year. I understand you're penalizing Ohio State by not letting them in, but you're also penalizing the other teams if you let them in. So, again, I mean, I just don't think that that's fair. I don't care what Ohio State did last year. They haven't really beaten anybody this year in their 5 games. And if they played Michigan, they still wouldn't have beat anybody because Michigan stinks this year. So, I mean, listen, I agree with you to a point. But, listen, if you're going to let somebody in that wins 6 games, then why even have a schedule? It's meaningless to me. So,
Don and Mac, kudos to you. You're actually convincing me. You're actually convincing me. Okay? But keep in mind, when Ohio State, when their conference made the decision, they didn't know how things were going to play out with the other teams. No one had a peek into the future. The amount of games all the teams are going to be playing and so on. And now it's kind of backfiring on Ohio State. Believe me, if they needed to get the games in to make the playoffs, they would play every 3 days.
Right.
They would have 5 games in the next 15 games, if 15 days if they had to. That's a slight exaggeration, but they would look to just pad their schedule. And now they can't do that.
And Jack, another thing that we're not looking at, and I don't know the answer to this, but what does that division get as far as money for having somebody in the Final Four? And what does Ohio State get for money for being in the playoffs compared to these other teams that have gone through the whole season, COVID or not? The amount of money they might be losing or that division might be losing. I think there's a lot more in finances that we're not even looking at, Jack.
There's certain teams, college football and the television networks want in the playoffs. And Ohio State's one of the select few. Them, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame. That would be the perfect scenario, those four, playing off against one another. And Ohio State has such a great reputation, and they're there every year, at least contending for the national title, that to just bypass them completely is difficult because Ohio State does have a lot of clout from their end as well. And
Yes.
certain pressures being put on college football from the state of Ohio politically, the TV networks, and we'll see what'll happen. But your point is well taken. It is kind of unfair for the other teams to have, those extra games and truly earn their way in. And Ohio State saying, well, it's not our fault that we didn't get the extra games. And there's no completely right answer to this, no matter what the decision is going to be. But I think when all is said and done, the magic of Ohio State's name, the clout they have, is going to get them into the playoffs. And then if they win it all, you're going to have an even bigger controversy.
No doubt, Jack. So let's get into the standings, Jack. We do this every Wednesday because we missed 2 days, and we get a chance to look at the standings, where they're at right now, and what happened because of the game. The Bills, 9-3, Jack. They look really good. San Fran is not, they don't have all their players there, but it's a solid team even without Jimmy G and their tight end. The Bills played very well. Josh Allen looks like he's grown into a very good quarterback compared to what he was a couple of years ago. The Bills are 9-3. The Miami stuck with Tua. Thank you. Even when he wasn't playing well in the beginning, they're at 8-4. The Patriots, don't say die to the Patriots. They destroyed the Chargers, even though the Chargers are not a real good team. They're competitive, but 45-0, Jack, is a statement. And the New York Jets, Jack, losing on the last play of the game, still winless.
I don't want to hear about the Jets playing well and this and that. I mean, bottom line is you have to close out games. They didn't close out this particular game. And we'll talk about it more as the week goes on. But before the winning touchdown pass with the Raiders when Greg Williams blitzed and left man-on-man coverage, before that, they dropped 3 players back. And one of the open receivers got behind him. And the only reason it wasn't a touchdown, Derek Carr overthrew the receiver. So that may have convinced Greg Williams to blitz on the next play, which was a miserable decision that got him fired. But how do you let a man get behind you twice in a row? And even on man coverage, we know this, Mac, from the time we were kids and we would be playing two-hand touch and it would be last down and it would be touchdown and nothing. The kids playing against us, we would drop back to the end zone.
Sure.
We wouldn't let them get by us no matter what. That's rule number 1. You don't let the receiver get behind you, even if it's man-on-man coverage, and that's what happened.
You know what was really weird? Jack, I watch all the coaching decisions and stuff because that's my passion. Not only did they not drop everybody back in coverage looking for the Hail Mary, they had a middle linebacker spying Dalton, and he didn't rush him. And he didn't do anything in coverage. All he did was stand there.
Yeah.
What? As the quarterback. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. He was standing there watching, watching him. And it's like, what kind of call is that? I mean, listen, I understand what you were saying to play before, but that wasn't man-to-man, Jack. That was zone. Zone is different than prevent.
Well, they had 3 guys back there. That's what I said.
But they were playing in a zone defense, which is different than a prevent defense where you're not letting the other team or you're trying to prevent the other team from scoring where you got your backs all the way back. In a zone, of course, you have your area of field you cover. Listen, I mean, does he deserve to be fired? I think him and Gase both deserve to be fired because Gase knew what the guy was calling. He has what they call headphones on. And he hears the defensive play, and Gase could have stepped in there right then and said, whoa, we're not doing that. We're not going to do an all-out blitz on the last play of the game and give Carr a shot to throw behind us. To me, Gase is just as much to blame as Williams is, Jack.
You know what's revealing in all this that no one talks about? That Adam Gase fired Greg Williams, that he's allowed to fire Greg Williams, okay? That he's allowed to. Maybe Adam Gase is more secure than we think he is as far as coming back next year, because it may have come from upstairs, it may have come from the ownership, and Adam Gase, chances are, wasn't too fond of Greg Williams, because early in the year, Greg Williams was at least indirectly critical of Adam Gase, claiming, well, a string of bad games isn't the defense's fault. Okay? He basically was pointing a finger towards Adam Gase. So we don't know what's going on with the ownership, with the Johnsons. They may have told Adam Gase, you make any decision you want in regard to Greg Williams, but that might be their way of chipping away. Well, Greg Williams gets fired, then Adam Gase will go at the end of the year. But I don't see it playing out that way from ownership, because ownership would let the whole coaching staff go in that case, and they just get a new coach and maybe even a new GM, but probably Joe Douglas is safe would be my guess. So that was kind of revealing that Adam Gase had that authority.
Yeah. So AFC West, Jack, right now, the Chiefs are cruising 11-1. The Raiders are still in the playoffs hunt at 7-5. Denver and the Chargers follow them. To me, right now, the Chiefs are the best team probably in the league, Jack. I mean, not just the AFC. I think the Chiefs, right at this point in time, are the best team in the league.
I think the Chiefs are maybe the only team in the NFL from the beginning of the year is just preparing for the playoffs. That's it. You know, they have to play these games, get their position, but everything the Chiefs are doing is just preparing for the playoffs, and no other team in the NFL has the offensive weapons that the Chiefs have. You know, quarterback, receivers, running game, and they have a decent defense as well. They're going to be tough to beat. A lot of people were rating Pittsburgh as the best team in the NFL. I'm sure you'll get to Pittsburgh soon.
Yeah.
And kudos to you, Mac, for all our listeners out there. You're the one that picked the Washington Redskins to upset the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, you know, take a well-deserved bow today on a great pick.
Oh, thank you, Jack. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention again. You know, it's just I saw Washington and I saw how they played and I saw Pittsburgh was playing, and to me it wasn't a stretch. So let's get to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh 11-1 now. They still, believe it or not, have the tiebreaker because they lost to an NFC team, not an AFC team. So if the season was to end right now, Pittsburgh would be the person sitting back, the team sitting back and having that bye. The Browns with an impressive win at Tennessee at 9-3. Baltimore wins last night over Dallas, as we talked about, with that impressive running game, and the Bengals fall to 2-9, Jack.
I'm going to tell you, certain games are upsets and certain games are statement games. Okay, the Giants and the Redskins, those are upsets. But what the Cleveland Browns did, beating Tennessee the way they did, that's a statement game. Ignore the final score, which made it look like a close game. It wasn't a close game. Cleveland jumped out to the huge lead, and they basically had the game locked up early. And especially Baker Mayfield, the 4 touchdown passes in the first half. And Cleveland had a soft schedule. They had to beat a quality team. And they did it in beating the Tennessee Titans. And Cleveland's name never came into the equation as a Super Bowl contender. But at 9-3 now, they deserve a look. They deserve a look as a team that might be able to cause some damage during the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland was very smart. I give a lot of credit to the offense, whoever's running the offense, whether it's the head coach or the offensive coordinator. The Browns have one of the best running games in the league. And they used play action pass in the beginning and just tore them up right away with the passes. It was a great scheme they ran, and hats off to them. In the AFC South, Jack. Tennessee still doesn't have it together. They're tied with the Colts at 8-4. The Texans fumble the opportunity to move up. They're still at 4-8. And the Jags at 1-11. They lost in overtime in a competitive game, Jack.
The Jags are really playing tough. They're really, really playing tough every game, trying to win, coming a little short, scratching, clawing under their head coach, Doug Marrone. And they just haven't quite been able to get it done in wins and losses. And yeah, any game the Jaguars in, they actually have a chance. That's how competitive they've been.
I totally agree with you. Backstage right now, folks, we have the Philly sports guy. We'll be right with him so he can explain to us a little bit about Philadelphia news, and that should be fun. So before we get to the Philly sports guy, let's look at the NFC East. I'm going to set him right up. The Giants, with upset playing defense Parcells will be proud of.
Yeah.
They really bullied the Seattle Seahawks and won that game with a backup quarterback. Washington, again, they beat Pittsburgh. A lot of people thought that was an upset. I thought it would be pretty even going in. The Eagles, with an appearance from Hurst, lose and fall to 3-8. Hurst does come up with a little bit of excitement at the end of the game. And, of course, Dallas is, with that loss last night, is last in it. And I'm not even going to call them the NFL least anymore, Jack. As long as them two teams keep playing the way they're playing, I'm going to give them a little kudos, and I'll just call them the NFC East, Jack.
Dallas might have the most talent in that division, but they're the worst team. I mean, ironically, it's hard to pinpoint exactly. Ezekiel Elliott really played hard last night.
Yes.
He really played hard, determined. It just
they keep saying Dallas is the most talented team. I haven't seen it yet, Jack, on the field. So let's bring up the Philly sports guy, Jamie Pags, and see what he has to say, his words of wisdom on all Philadelphia sports. And we'll get back to the standings after we talk to the Philly sports guy. How you doing, Jamie?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Hanging right in there, my friend. How about yourself?
I tell you, it's been an interesting last couple of days, starting from Sunday and moving on from there. Yeah, I figured I'd come on. I'd have to ask you guys, what did you guys want to talk about? Because there's not really much happening in Philadelphia.
Well, I just want to criticize it, Jamie, to start very quickly with the Phillies, to just leave off. But we'll get off the Phillies because they're not the big news in Philadelphia today. You know, it's obviously the Eagles and the Sixers. They have laid out the money, the ownership for free agents. They're entitled to take a year off. Bryce Harper, Zach Wheeler, Didi Gregorius. They have signed guys. I mean, a team is entitled to take 1 year off from signing free agents, considering that they're losing money. They're not fans in attendance. So I kind of feel the Phillies should be given a pass if they decide 1 year they're not going to do it.
No, absolutely not. This has been a narrative for a very long time with Philadelphia ownership of the Phillies. This goes back to Bill Giles back in the late 80s when he was crying poor. And, it's 2020 and there's a lot of people that aren't working. There's a lot of people that are struggling to just be able to put food on the table for their families. And I get really unhappy when I hear about billionaires crying about pennies. And I understand that this is a business and that these people are there to make money. But the ownership has been in place for a really long time there. And they weren't crying a lot when they were putting a great product on the field from 2007 to 2013, where they had the longest record of sellouts, in the MLB. But now the fact that they can't seem to put two things together right, they're going to start to try to trade people off and cut payroll. I mean, he cut like 60 jobs and said Happy Thanksgiving to them. And so I have a real problem with people that are able to kind of do that nonstop. And like I said, Philadelphia's heard this too long that we're a small market baseball team, which is not the case at all. And he said last year he went from 2 years ago from spending stupid money to now not spending any money at all. And if you want to take a year off, I mean, I understand a little bit, but you want to be able to keep the players. You traded away assets to be able to bring in Real Muto and
No.
those guys, and to not put out the money to keep him here, you're going to really make a fan base revolt against you. And
Pags. I gotta disagree with you a little bit here. You say billionaires. Well, most billionaires don't have billions of dollars in their bank. It's not liquidated. Okay, they're running a business. They got a farm system to take care of. They've got other businesses to take care of. They got to have a product that makes money. You look over at the Mets and look at their last ownership. They were losing $50 million a year, Pags. $50 million a year, and they couldn't sign anybody. They didn't expect this COVID virus to come out and close down their farm system parks, that they would have no fans in the stadium, which is where they make their most money. The playoff system was thrown together at the last minute, and this is where they make most of their money at the end of the year during the playoffs, where they get the major cut of the playoff finances, and they didn't have no fans in the stands, and they may not have any this year either. We don't know what's going to happen, Pags. I understand what you're saying. If you want a good product, you've got to pay. But you know something, Pags? This is different. This is the kind of year where you don't know what's going to happen. You've already lost money. Who knows what his other investments have lost during COVID? I mean, it's easy to say, "Hey, billionaire, spend your money," but and then you turn around and say, well, people are losing their jobs. Think of all the minor league players that lost their jobs because they couldn't support it. So, I mean, listen, I'm not saying give them a pass. I think the Phillies made a great manager hire. I think they really tried to put a good product on the field with all those people that they picked up. And now they got to deal with the consequences. And Phillies, because of the COVID or whatever, wasn't able to make a playoff run or a World Series run. I'm not saying you're totally wrong. I'm just saying you're being a little too hard, Pags.
Well, and just to jump back in there and to rebuke that. So I feel that some of the upper management that he put in place is so they put a good offense on the field, but they didn't do anything in the pitching. And ultimately, we had good enough offense to be able to get to the playoffs.
Zach Wheeler, Philly man, Zach Wheeler. They addressed pitching a year ago for big money, $115 million for 5 years.
If you don't have the middle relief or any money spent in that, they got rid of good pitchers that went other places, that didn't sign for a tremendous amount of money, that went to other places and did well in the middle relief. And we were the worst bullpen in the major leagues.
But that's not being cheap. That's just not
being
effectively addressing situations. Could I just detour something with baseball before we get off that's important to mention, that all of us can make a comment? A great Philadelphia Philly player passed away, Richie Allen. Richie Allen was maybe a little before your time, Philly man. Mac might remember. He did have a reputation at the time of not running balls out. In today's era, anything Richie Allen did would have been considered normal. They called him Richie Allen then. They call him Dick Allen today.
Right.
Okay, but he was called Richie Allen, and he was considered a lightning rod. They'd be so mad at him, they said he'd loaf down to first base when he'd hit a ball. And like I said, today it's normal. Guys don't want to pull a muscle, so on. Then he got traded to the White Sox. I remember Chuck Tanner, the manager, saying, I'll be able to handle him. If you use those words today as a manager, I can handle a player in this sensitive time. That might be all over social media. So, right. But Richie Allen was a great talent who came so close to making it into the Hall of Fame on the Veterans Committee. He still might get in, but he was a lightning rod during the time he played. So I was a little surprised, considering how controversial he was, reading that the great Mike Schmidt would call Richie Allen a mentor towards him. And I'm hearing all these great things, which I'm glad to hear, which I'm very pleased to hear, considering how controversial, he was before.
I'm glad that you brought him up, because he was somebody that I had written down on my notes to make sure that I wanted to give a little tribute to. Like I said, he was before my time. but he was a beast. He was a beast at the plate, and he had a Philadelphia attitude even back then. So he was really loved by the city. He may have gotten his share of, smack that, hey, listen, you got to run these out and things like that. But I mean, he was definitely a Philadelphia guy. He was good with the fans, and he brought it to the ballpark with the bat as every day. And I feel like that he should be in the Hall of Fame. I know that there's a committee in Philadelphia that is still working on trying to get him there through the Veterans Committee. So, and
Okay.
if it wasn't for COVID, it would have been a possibility this year.
Okay, Pax. Let's turn to the Eagles real quick. Carson Wentz. I don't know if it's Carson Wentz. I think it's Carson Wentz and the play calling. I really believe that Carson Wentz, when the Eagles drafted Hurts, kind of did something to him. I don't know what happened to him, but the call playing hasn't been that great. They put Hurts in. He gets sacked 3 times, but he starts making plays. He brings some excitement to it. He's going to play against the Saints. First, let's go to last game, Jamie. What are your thoughts on the last game?
Well, there was a lot of Carson in the decision to have to bench him. I have been a very big Carson supporter, as you know, and I feel that this team was going to go as far as he was going to take them. And when you were watching him just even sort of fumble around inside the pocket was collapsing, and still being indecisive with how he was going to do things, and not being able to roll out, not being able to do those types of things that he's been able to do in the past, it makes me believe that there is a little bit more mental going on here. We could go all the way back to 2017. He was the best quarterback in the NFL, and then he gets hurt, and Foles comes in and wins the Super Bowl. Starts the next season, comes in, tries to win the Super Bowl with every pass that he did, gets his back broken, which is not his fault. Foles comes in, leads them to the playoffs. Then you have the following year where, again, I feel like that even though Foles isn't here anymore, he's got this chip on his shoulder that he's been thinking about, and it's been frustrating for him to try to get beyond that. And now you bring it to this year where in the second round, they draft a quarterback who was highly touted, and he's always been looking over his shoulder a little bit. So this goes to me and reminds me of a time where if somebody needed sports psychology to be able to just kind of get into his head a little bit, this would be one of those situations. I can't understand what is the problem. Like I think that yes, some of the play calling has to deal with this, but I also believe now that he has been changing the plays at the line. So I just can't believe that they are only trying to run the ball like 36% of the time. I feel like that there's more runs being called, and he's changing the plays at the line, and because of that, it's changing the dynamic. And then there's also a very strange dynamic between Wentz, Hurts, and Peterson. You never see the two of them talk. You never see Peterson and his quarterback talking when he comes off the field. And the moment that Hurts came off the field, he went right to Doug. So that was really telling to me. And it's even at the end of the game where Rodgers spends a few seconds talking to Hurts, and then he spent like 7 minutes talking to Wentz, and they didn't show it for very much, but it was very, very telling. That you could tell that Wentz is very defeated, and I think that the hero ball is finally caught up to him, and I believe that him being on the bench is going to help his game some. Like they're not going to be able to trade him. I mean, unless somebody comes in with like 2 first-round picks, which I don't believe is going to happen.
They would give Wentz away now to get rid of the contract.
Yeah,
Contract.
Yeah, but they'd have to eat way too much money to do that.
Right.
I mean, even if they trade him away, it's $40 million. At $175 million is a projected cap for next year. I mean, now you're talking about a good, what's that, 18, 20% of the cap. is going to be on a guy who's no longer on your team, I don't know that they can do that. And I don't know that they can say that the Wentz project is a failure after he was so good in 2016 and 2017. So I mean, in 2016, everybody seems to forget that year, but he came in day one and played a whole season and as a rookie and did fairly well. Came in the next season and brought them to the Super Bowl, even though he could only go to week 13 because he got hurt. And that's there's a lot to be said for that. And then everything else I feel like has been a mental situation. And I feel like mental problems can be resolved. I just don't think it's right now.
Well, what I think has to be resolved, Jamie, is the locker room with Wentz. We told you we had a reporter from Philly Voice,
Joe Santoliquito,
that came on and said there were problems in the locker room with the players and with Wentz not really being a communicator in the locker room, not pretty much by himself. And I think it's finally coming back to bite him, because when you're going through tough times, your team, especially when you're supposed to be the leader of the team, kind of falls in line behind you. And I don't think they're really doing that as they did in the past. Foles supposedly was loved in the locker room. That's why they played so hard for him. And now with Hurst, if Hurst, as you're saying, goes over and talks to the coach, and if he can get along with the players better than Wentz, there's going to be problems for Wentz. I don't know what they do with him. I would imagine that he probably will even be back in this year. That's just my prediction. He'll be back and playing starting this year, unless Hurst comes out and you guys go ahead and beat the Saints, which is a long shot. So let's talk about the Saints real quick. Next week, they got a backup quarterback that's playing out of this world, but that's the
Taysom Hill, yeah.
Saints can put a backup quarterback there and keep winning like Breeze doesn't matter. The Eagles got a long road to hoe if they're going to beat the Saints. What do you think about that upcoming game?
I watched a little bit of the Saints game last week, and I watched a stat come up on the screen that until Atlanta scored that touchdown in the fourth quarter, that the Saints had gone 5 games without letting a touchdown. So it doesn't matter how good the offense is. If your defense is holding people down that well, it's going to be hard to win games. And they have a safety on their team who circled this game the moment that it came out on the schedule. And I have a suspicion he's going to be very fired up for this game, and wants to show all of the ownership that he should still have been in Philadelphia, because he really wanted to be here. So the fact that he went back to New Orleans, I know that
Malcolm Jenkins, yeah,
correct. The moment that New Orleans got rid of him, they were unhappy with that decision. So much so that the moment he became available again, they got him back. And I feel like that lack of leadership in the locker room as a whole, like in a total team aspect, I feel like he spoke for the offense and the defense. And there's a lot to be said for that. Like it's amazing how you don't really think about those types of things. But because we're not allowed access into the locker room, the offense would talk to Malcolm Jenkins all the time. They would communicate with them. Now I feel like it's the defense is on one side, the offense is on the other side, and neither shall the two meet. And that's a big deal when you don't have somebody who's mediating between them. I mean, it's supposed to be a total team game, and we have been anything but.
Very true. So let's turn to the 76ers really quick. Doc Rivers addressed Paul George's comments, which is, to me, is a bunch of nonsense. But Doc saw the first practice. You guys was very impressed. The thing I think that Doc Rivers has to do with the 76ers is something the other coaches haven't been able to do, and that's to get Embiid, and their other superstar together, to play Simmons, to play together as a team and get spacing, because you got them two big guys. Simmons is not an outside shooter. He drives to the basket. Embiid's under the basket. There's no spacing there. And when they're both on the court, they seem to have problems. If Doc Rivers can fix that spacing out and have Embiid and Simmons on the court together, mainly Simmons driving and maybe Embiid coming across, getting rebounds or hitting Embiid off a pass from Simmons, I think Philadelphia will have a good shot this year.
I'm hoping that he can start to implement the bully ball that was supposed to happen last year. And that they have these big guys. The last time I think of big guys like that were that dominant was for the Houston Rockets when they had the Twin Towers over there, or when you think of San Antonio with Robinson and what's you know who I'm talking about when they had the two big
Tim
men.
Duncan.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Then when they had those guys down there, the Sixers have the talent to be able to be that type of team. They just have not had the ability to put it together yet. And I feel that the fact that they have been trying to force feed Simmons as a guard has been the big issue with that. So I'm thinking that by making him a point forward and putting him down closer to the baskets, having somebody who's going to be able to play off of the ball, similar to their draft pick, their first round draft pick, that's going to make a big difference. And somebody else who's going to be able to get open, because Embiid likes to shoot the three a lot too. So I think there's definitely space on the court for both of them to do what they do best or what they like to do best. But I want to see the implementation of the bully ball that they were supposed to start last year and didn't.
Well, all this James Harden talk, I'm sure, has Philadelphia excited, but it's to me, it's nothing more than a big tease because any deal for Harden would have to include Ben Simmons, and that wouldn't be good for the Sixers to give up on a talent like Simmons, who might just be able to take off and become one of the elite players in the NBA, for Harden, who would maybe be a 2-year project. I just can't see how the Sixers could possibly pull off that deal or why they would want to do it. Why would they want to part with Ben Simmons? It makes no sense.
Actually, I mean, truth of the matter is that I would think it would go the other way and they would do it for Embiid. But I think that you're right. I think that it is just some talk. I think that Harden's trying to stir it up, stir the pot some, just trying to say, hey, I want to get out of Houston because I just don't believe that this team's going to win here. And he's trying to do whatever he can. I agree. I think that out of the two, I mean, although Embiid's a much more dynamic player than Simmons because the fact that he shoots the ball more frequently, I think that Simmons is the better athlete. And if I had to choose between the two, if I was the GM and I had Houston calling me up saying, hey, we're willing to trade Harden, I'd be more willing to part with Embiid than I would be with Simmons. Because I think that those two would work tremendously well together than having the two egos of Harden and Embiid on the same court without Simmons.
I don't think Philly should trade either one of them. The possibilities there are pretty much endless if you can get them two going. Turning to the Flyers real quick. The division, there looks like there might be a division realignment where the Penguins may not be in their division. That's just crazy to me. Why would you take the Penguins out of the Flyers division and have them playing, the Rangers or the Islanders and I don't get that at all. But there is talk of that coming up, Pags.
They're trying to make I guess it's going to be like a 3-conference. I mean, I've read a little bit about it. I feel like hockey is so far away right now, and it's hockey is like my second love, and it's so far away. I don't believe anything that I'm reading even right now. I get more reports out of Canada that they're going to make the Canadian division, and then they're going to have like an East and a West, and Pittsburgh would almost kind of fall into the West category.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to really work this out because it's the problem with the COVID is that the 14 days going into Canada that you would have to quarantine before you would be able to do anything. And that's what's making things really difficult. I'm really going to be surprised if they're able to put together a hockey season.
Oh, they'll have one. They'll definitely have one, Pags. One way or another, they'll have hockey. Trust me.
I hope so. I miss hockey.
Speaking of the Flyers, real quick, I don't know how big of a get this is, but they did sign Philippe Myers to 3 years for $2.25 million. Is that a big signing, Pags, or is that just making sure the team is solid?
Like a third, fourth liner. He's a good player. They need shooters. That's the big difference. That was the one thing that you could see missing in the Islanders series and in parts of the Canadian series when they did the playoff. That they just don't have the snipers that they have. Myers is a great player. You know what I mean? But he's a third liner. Will sometimes be able to jump on the second line. Definitely be somebody who's on the second power play, but not somebody who's going to make a tremendous splash that they need. They need somebody who can put the puck in the net. They have a goaltender now, which is the first thing that they've needed for such a long time. And I feel that really, I mean, now that he's going to be in his in essence his third year in professional hockey, it's going to be a tremendous difference. He's going to really start to evolve, and that's where the puck's going to stop with. You know what I mean? They're going to go as far as Carter Hart goes.
Well, you mentioned with the Flyers losing to the Islanders in the playoffs. Would you say the NHL playoffs are much more of a crapshoot than any other sport, where anyone could truly beat anyone in the NHL playoffs, as opposed to the NBA, where it's very rare that a number 6, 7, or 8 seed could be the number 1 seed?
Well, I think we showed that in 2010. Where we got in by winning against the Rangers in overtime and went in as a 7th seed because us beating the Rangers brought the Canadians in as the 8th seed, and that was the conference finals. The Flyers against the Canadians. So, and it's in any other sport, one player can be stopped. When you're talking about it with hockey, a very hot goaltender is going to be able to carry an entire team. And that's the biggest difference in that.
That's a great point, Pags. And, I think it has something to do with, being the best out of 5 instead of the best out of 7 in the beginning to, the way the series were constructed during the playoffs. And the home field you and Philly and Boston had was incredible compared to the other teams with the records. And, you didn't have that last year with the COVID and playing in different positions, different areas under the bubble. And I think they'll probably start out with the bubble again next year, and I would imagine anyway because it's still out there. So Pags, I want to thank you for coming in again this week. Covered a lot of Philadelphia sports. Good luck to you and the Eagles next week. You're going to need it against the Saints, and hopefully you guys can start something, get something going, give a little hope to the Eagle fans, and we'll see you again next week, Pags.
Hold on real quick before I get to go. How about your Giants pulling off a big upset against the Seahawks? And then I even gave a quick thank you to the Washington football team for beating the Steelers because I get a lot of Pittsburgh love across the state. So I had to do a little dance on a terrible towel in honor of the Washington football team for that.
That's terrible, Bags. That's
the
terrible.
Numbers are bad for your Eagles now. If either the Giants or the Redskins go 2-2 the rest of the way, if either one does, the Eagles have to win out over their last 4 games to make the playoffs. So the numbers are brutal now.
Week 16 is going to decide who's going to win the NFC East between Washington and the Giants.
Well, the difference, I think, Pags, with the new coaches is that the Redskins and the Giants have now become very physical. There's no patty cake out there anymore. There's no trying to throw the ball beautifully. They come at you on both sides of the line and they try to bully you. And I think the Eagles could learn a lesson from that. Go back to what they're good at, and that's punching you in the mouth. So, again, thank you again, Pags. We'll see you next week. Great reporting on all Philadelphia sports for us, and we're happy to have you on every week. Thanks again, Pags.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
So there you go, Jack. The Philly sports guy looks crazy in his videos, but when he comes on, this man is a thoughtful, intelligent man who can give you more information about Philadelphia than most. So we're glad to have him on.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So, Jack, what we're going to do real quick, let's see if I can switch it off here a little bit. We're going to go on and we're going to have a little quick commercial break here so that we can kind of get ourselves back together, get realigned for the rest of the show. And I hear Jack get up and running right now. That's pretty interesting. All right, Jack. So, official timeout. We'll be right back. Oh, Lord.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 through 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with my co-host, the great Jack Hirsch. How are you doing today, Jack? In case any of
as good as I was an hour ago when you asked me.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to make sure that the new viewers tuning in right now, the new viewers tuning in right now, know how you're doing, because it's important to all of them, Jack. It really is. So what we're going to do, Jack, let me tell you a little bit about one of our sponsors, BST Sports and Breaks, at bstbreaks.com. They jumped on board, and they're sponsoring us too. Check them out at bstbreaks.com. They're on our website. You can go to the front page, click onto their link. They got great cards, great jerseys that are signed, and they got all kinds of cards if you love to collect cards like I do anyway, Jack, it's a great thing that they have going on there. So go ahead and give them a look. So what we're going to do, Jack, is we're going to get back to the standings. We left off at the East. Let's go to the NFC West. The Rams run all over the Cards and are tied now with Seattle after they lost to the Giants. They're at 8-4. The Cards at 6-6 with the 49ers at 5-7. Still a very, very competitive division, Jack. Hello, Jack.
Good race. I mean, I'm high on the Rams, as I've said on past shows. I think they're going to the Super Bowl. Jared Goff is their quarterback. Is like a little questionable. He's not elite, but he's a pretty good game manager. But they're about as well a balanced team as any in the NFL, with the exception of the Chiefs. I mean, got excellent wide receivers, excellent defense, led by Sam Darnold. Jalen Ramsey, I mean, elite cornerback. I mean, as good as any in the NFL.
Well, I think the Saints in Green Bay would have something to say about that. And Green Bay is cruising right now at 9-3. They won, won in overtime. No, they didn't win in overtime. Sorry, they won pretty easily. Minnesota won in overtime, beating winning over the Jags. They're at 6-6. The Lions and the Bears are tied at 5-7, Jack. The Lions came back to beat the Bears. I don't know what's going on with the Bears. I know that head coach is in a lot of trouble. And we'll see what happens over there, Jack. I don't know if Minnesota's going to make the playoffs this year or not.
I mean, you're talking about who, Minnesota?
Yeah.
Well, Minnesota's had kind of an awkward year. That's the best way to describe it. I mean, Mike Zimmer's a very good coach. They started off very poorly, then they made a little run. That loss to Dallas, I mean, I can't start to tell you, I mean, how damaging a loss that is. They're 6-6 right now. The Vikings, had they won that Cowboy game, they'd be 7-5, and they'd be in the thick of the playoff picture. So sometimes teams lose a game and there's no explanation for it, and it really comes back to haunt them. And I think that's the case with the Vikings. That Cowboy game, they still might get into the playoffs, but something about this Viking team, they just got by the Carolina Panthers when the Panthers missed the field goal on the last play of the game. They look like they're destined to go 8-8 this year, miss the playoffs, and
they're up
for next year.
Definitely up and down, Jack. The Saints wrap up the playoff berth at 10-2. Follow at the Bucks, who seem not to be able to get their stuff together at 7-5, and the Falcons and Panthers are tied at 4-8, Jack.
Saints have been outstanding at 10-2, but they've been outstanding the past couple of years as well, and then they get bumped out of the playoffs. So who knows which Saint team is going to show up? And you made a good point before. They can win without Drew Brees, at least during the regular season. But come playoff time, I mean, who do you want in there? Taysom Hill or Drew Brees?
That's a good question, Jack. I mean, Drew Brees hasn't looked great this year. You got a young quarterback who's playing good. He can beat you with his arm and his legs. I think that's a bigger decision than people think. If he keeps playing this way, and say they go on a run, say they go and they're 12-4 at the end of the year, or 13-3 at the end of the year, what do you do as a Saints head coach?
You start Drew Brees without question, and you play Drew Brees, but you get the feeling this is Drew Brees last year. So if he's in a playoff game and he's struggling, the bigger decision is, do you stick with Drew Brees the whole way? Because his pedigree. When he does struggle, he tends to snap out of it a lot of the time. Okay, unlike a young quarterback who might not. Do you go to Taysom Hill? Do you get, like what I was talking about, relief quarterbacks? Do you go to the bullpen and bring in Taysom Hill during a playoff game? It's hard to do that with a Drew Brees.
Well, Jack, there was a pretty good quarterback that went to the Super Bowl in New England. He got hurt, and a kid named Tom Brady came and took over. And even though Bledsoe was healthy, they stuck with Tom Brady. I don't know,
in all fairness, Drew Bledsoe is a respected quarterback, but you can't put him on a par with Drew Brees. Drew Brees is a future Hall of Fame. And if you can make all the quarterbacks in the NFL 22 years old again, all the quarterbacks, and you had to draft them all, Drew Brees would be a top 5 quarterback. Okay,
I
obviously
don't.
you have Mahomes, Rodgers, Brady, Brees, and maybe one other who I'm not thinking of.
Maybe Roethlisberger, but the question I'm saying though, Jack, is that you just brought up Brees is getting older. This may be his retirement year. I know they got some loyalty there, but Brees hasn't looked like Brees did.
But listen, Mac, Taysom Hill hasn't been lighting it up. He hasn't been spectacular. They've
I don't
been
know.
winning. He's been good, but he hasn't been great. He's been good. It's not like he's been a phenom where you have to sit Brees down. It's not like it was at Dallas some years ago when Tony Romo was injured and Zach Prescott was absolutely sensational. That made it nearly impossible for the Cowboys to go back to Tony Romo because Zach Prescott was off the charts the way he was playing.
Well,
Taysom Hill isn't playing as well. He's
listen.
doing a very good job of filling in.
Yeah,
but
running
he's
for a
not
couple.
Brees at the end, and he's not proven over a long period of time.
Well, neither was Tom Brady, and he was a 6th round draft pick, Jack. And he's not only is he beating you with his legs, but now he's throwing touchdowns and he's hitting open receivers. He looks like he can throw the ball. I don't know, Jack. I think it's a lot harder decision than people think. So
I'm sure Sean Payton, the same coach, it's centered his mind, and I think he's pretty committed with Drew Brees. Drew Brees is going to be back before the year's over, maybe in a couple of weeks, supposedly. So he'll get to play in the regular season. If Drew Brees plays poorly, then the whispers are going to start coming out. Maybe Taysom Hill should start. Then it becomes a discussion. I think you'll see Drew Brees go in there and play well. Lewis, Louis.
Yes,
okay,
it is.
But that's how you spell Lewis normally, like Jerry Lewis. That's a good spelling for.
Yes,
most people named Lewis. It is spelled L-E-W-I-S, but in the case of Joe Lewis, it's Louis.
I think your eyes are deceiving you, Jack. And I'm gonna tell you why. Or 1 second, because you are correct. Joe Lewis is spelled J-O.
There you go.
Yes, he is. And I'm getting better and better at this production stuff, Jack. I'm normally just a talker. I love to talk, and doing this at the same time is a lot of fun. It's something that I enjoy doing. So
we're gonna ask me as a trivia question. What was Joe Lewis's nickname?
Yeah, so it's the Bronx Bomber.
Brown Bomber.
Brown Bomber, right?
Yeah, in the Bronx. Yeah, the Brown Bomber, who fought his big fights in the Bronx. He could have been called the Bronx Bomber.
Yes.
He fought his big fights, a good number of them at Yankee Stadium.
Yes, sir. So let me set you up, Jack, because I know you have a lot more insight in boxing than I do. Joe Lewis, legendary heavyweight champion, 66-3. He was the first black champion after Johnson and Dempsey retired.
Heavyweight, yeah.
Yes, and the white fans were a little weary because Johnson was a little bit more of a flamboyant guy, but Joe won him over with his humbleness and his class. Became an American hero in his second fight against Matt Schmeling, who was the German fighter who was champion, and of course the Nazis were in power then. He beat him very quickly and decisively. Came out of retirement twice because of his financial problems. His last fight against legendary champion Rocky Marciano, and it said he fought him because he knew of Joe Lewis's financial situation and really wasn't too crazy about fighting him or beating him.
I mean that the information that you're going over, I mean, if you Google it, you're going to read it, and some people are going to say that it's not entirely accurate.
That's why I turned to you.
Joe Lewis only came out of retirement once. What happened, he went into the service as heavyweight champion, as a great heavyweight champion from 1941 to 1956. Okay, he served in the military. He didn't go on the battlefield. He boxed a ton of exhibitions for entertainment for the troops. They utilized him in a great way to keep the morale up of the troops. They see the great Joe Lewis as one of them. and then he came back to the ring. Then he came back to the ring. It wasn't a he didn't retire from the military. Then he retired as champion after defeating Jersey Joe Walcott in their second fight. The first one was controversial. He knocked him out in 11 rounds in the second fight. And then he made a comeback because Joe Louis, like a lot of other athletes, wasn't exactly good with his money. The people representing him didn't pay his taxes. He didn't pay attention to it. He was in bad debt to the IRS, so he came back to the ring because he needed the money. He had the number of fights, and then the big fight with Rocky Marciano came up. And Rocky Marciano admired Joe Louis. He admired him tremendously. But to Marciano, it was an opportunity. He wasn't champion yet, Marciano. He was a contender. It was his chance to make a statement against the Brown Bomber. And even though Joe Louis wasn't the great Joe Louis we knew, he was still a good fighter. Nothing compared to what he was, but a good, quality fighter still. So Marciano relished the chance in reality to knock out Joe Louis. When he did it, he wasn't happy in a personal way. He felt bad for Louis in that sense, but he also knew it was advancing his own career.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I read some stuff on the fight where he actually apologized supposedly in the locker room afterwards. I'm not sure if that's true or not, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that didn't happen, Mac. He felt for Louis. Marciano liked Louis a heck of a lot. In fact, when he was a kid, Louis appeared at a function in Brockton, Massachusetts, when Louis was champion. And Marciano and his friends came up to him, and Louis gave them a little money and patted them on the head and left a very good impression. That's funny about Marciano's supporters. They're very protective of Marciano's legacy. If you tell them this guy, that guy could have beaten Marciano, they get mad. Especially if you tell them Muhammad Ali could have beaten Marciano, they'll go, no way. But if you tell them Joe Louis would have beaten Marciano, even though they'll disagree, they won't get mad. They'll give the Brown Bomber a pass. That's how much he was loved and admired.
Yeah. And you can find our Wall of Fame over at Mac Sports Insider website, Mac and Jack Sports. Our first inductee was Babe Ruth. Of course, baseball would not be baseball without Babe Ruth. I don't think boxing would be boxing without having Joe Louis on our Wall of Fame. So I can't say enough about the man. He was a great fighter, a great man. And, listen, if you're going to make a list of the greatest heavyweights of all time, Joe Louis is on it, Jack. That's all I know. So,
well, the consensus is right now Ali number one, Louis number two. That's how it is in most ratings. But I got to tell you something interesting about the passage of time. When Muhammad Ali retired, as champion in 1978, he had a couple of more fights after that, unfortunately, losing to Larry Holmes and Trevor Berbick. But when he retired in 1978, that was it. Ali had accomplished all he did. He wasn't to win another fight. If you asked anyone who was a greater heavyweight champion at that time, Muhammad Ali or Joe Louis, virtually everyone around that time rated Joe Louis ahead of Muhammad Ali. Virtually everyone. But now, as years have gone by and the younger generations and the old timers have passed on, public opinion is swayed. And now it's hard to find anyone who's going to put Louis ahead of Muhammad Ali. They generally put Louis in the second slot behind Ali. So that just shows what the passage of time, sometimes will do.
I'll put Louis ahead of Ali any day, Jack. So that's just my opinion. That's my opinion. So, Jack, we got one of my favorite parts of the show. Also, is and you know this music, Jack's coming up because I love to play this music when I'm asking you this question. So. Okay, Jack, for your trivia question, I've been going easy on you lately, and I'm going to continue that.
Whenever I get them right, you say you're going easy on me. Okay.
It's true. It's true. You are right. So, Jack, a very modern question for you. So I'm giving you a hint right away. Who has the rookie TD record for their first year play, Jack?
What the rookie TD record?
All right, what
Oh,
quarterback?
man.
Which quarterback has a rookie TD record for his first year played?
Touchdown passes, you mean?
Yep. Yes, TD touchdown.
My feeling is, okay, who came in as a sensational rookie. I don't know the answer for sure, but I know quarterbacks who've made a big bang onto the NFL and have caught the public imagination. I would have to go back and say Dan Marino.
Right, and you are wrong, Jack. That's the wrong answer.
That's the wrong answer. Dan Marino was sensational when
yes,
his rookie
yes,
year.
but as I said, it's very modern. Believe it or not, Jack. Who holds
How old? Well, yeah.
Well,
Wow, I'm getting old. Dan Marino's an old timer now.
Yes,
Wow.
he is. Jack. You're talking 1983. That's what at least 30, 40 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay, you gave me the hint. Very modern.
Yes.
Wow. So who is it?
It's Baker Mayfield, Jack, with 27 touchdown passes in his rookie year.
Wow. You know, that slipped by me.
Right.
That would have slipped by me, even with more time to answer. Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, you would think
that. Wow, that's a great question. That would have slipped by me.
The last couple of years, Baker's not been playing too well, but when he came in, everybody thought that he was the answer, and maybe he still is. We'll find out.
Well, he started to play well this year again, in all fairness to him. Hold on. He's 9-3.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
He didn't play nearly as well.
I think that new head coach they got there is doing what they should have done with Baker in the beginning, having a strong running game and then letting them do play action pass.
Great question. I never would have thought Baker Mayfield. I mean, Patrick Mahomes enters your head immediately, but that seemed too obvious. Too obvious.
Definitely. And when I looked up the question, I thought it was between Baker and Patrick, to tell you the truth, and it was neither. So I was kind of impressed.
You know what I wasn't thinking too, which could have factored into it. The Dolphins, I think in Marino's rookie year, had a 14-game schedule as opposed to a 16-game schedule some of the quarterbacks would have later on. So that's two less games to work with. I kind of wonder,
Jack,
I'm going to look up later what Marino's totals were and try to prorate it had he had two more games.
But Jack, remember, Miami went to the Super Bowl that year as a rookie and lost, so he did have the playoffs games and the Super Bowl to tack on to his.
You talk regular season.
Right. Well, I know it said for his first year, Jack. I don't know if it's just regular season or if it's
normally you take into account regular season only.
Okay. So there you go, Jack. Baker Mayfield. This is something I wanted to get to on Sunday, and now I got a chance to do it, Jack. So we'll set it up, and Jack's already shaking his head like
I'm excited about this.
I know. So here we go, folks. We have the coach's desk, my favorite part of the show for me anyway. And so this is where we get a team, Jack. I'm the head coach. We're trying to turn this organization around, and I needed an offensive coordinator, and you were the last one available I could pick. So we've gone over what's most important on offense, of course, is the offensive line. Everybody should know that and does know that. And we talked already about the blocking rules, inside, over, and out. We talked about what the advantages of the offense are, that they know what the snap count is, where the play basically is going, to keep all the plays in the series looking the same, not to tip your hat to the defense. So let's talk a little bit about blocking schemes and special blocking, what you do, and as it coordinates with the running game, Jack. So the first thing I want to talk about is a double team blocking. Double team blocking is used normally when you're running between the tackles, where you double team, get a little push on the line, and then release and get to the second level. And the Giants have been doing that really good lately, and that's why their running game has picked up inside the tackles, especially. Get the movement on a defensive lineman, fall off, and hit a linebacker or safety, whoever's next in line. So that's the first one, is double team blocking. The second is the cross block, Jack. This is a quick trap. And what you do is you block down on the guy inside or inside of you. The other guy takes a step back, lets the defender come up a little bit, and hits him in the side. That opens a quick hole for the running back. It's called a cross block or a quick trap. A trap block is normally done by a tight end or somebody in motion, where again you let the defensive end come up field unblocked, and the tight end traps them, open up the off tackle. You also have zone blocking, Jack, that happens a lot today. This is one of the most popular blocking schemes out there, where the whole offensive line steps in unison to the left or right in a blocking area. You hand off to the running back. The running back picks a hole to go through as they're pushing the defensive lineman down the line of scrimmage. So those are the main blocking schemes that go with the running plays. It's something that offensive line coaches and the offensive coordinator and the backfield coach coordinate on during the game, and it's used on running plays that are not just regular straight ahead blocking, Jack.
Good stuff, Mac.
Okay,
I'll be sure to use it whenever, the opportunity arises.
That's great, Jack. That's great. So, Jack, what we're going to do, I'm going to talk a little
Why
bit.
why don't you use this stuff when Byron Williams is on there, guy who played in the NFL,
right,
where he could give a lot more of a educated comment than I can. I'm listening, and it really is good stuff.
Right.
It made me kind of think, a question to ask you. Do coaches teach cheap shots on blocks that players could maybe get away with? Ways that aren't exactly in the rules that can help a little bit.
It all depends, Jack, on what is considered a cheap shot. As you know, you cannot engage. You used to be able to engage a defensive lineman when he's being blocked by somebody else by hitting him at the knees. There are cross blocks.
No, not to injure someone. Even though Greg Williams, the recently fired coach, was accused of that at New Orleans.
That is considered a cheap shot, but it wasn't at one time, Jack. And you know how things have progressed in the NFL, where a lot of things are called that weren't called. To crack block somebody, come back from a wide receiver coming down the line and hitting the linebacker when he's not expecting it. Some linebackers get a little ticked off on that. You might be able to consider that a cheap shot when you're running full speed at somebody. I don't care how big they are, and hit them hard as you can. That could be considered a cheap shot. Other than that, penalties, clipping.
Well, what drives me crazy when I see a player get clipped from behind, because anyone should know, you hit a guy from behind, they're going to throw a flag.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just can't figure out why a guy's going to get hit from behind. It makes
a lot of times, Jack, if the player just imagine if you're going to block somebody downfield and you have the player in their sight and they turn their back as you're going to hit them. I mean, that's a clip. And sometimes it's hard to get position, especially when you're running downfield trying to block. So there you go, Jack. That is our coach's desk update about the offensive line. And I want to take a minute to talk about Instagram before we take our second break, because our Instagram account, Jack, if you haven't looked at it yet, is outstanding. We follow all your local sport teams, Philadelphia, Boston, New York, all the teams, not just football, baseball, hockey, basketball. So if you're a fan of Boston sports, New York sports, or Philly sports, you go there and you can see the latest updates from your teams. You can check out all the new signings. You can check on your rivals too. So if you go to Mac and Jack Sports on Instagram, you get the latest updates from all the teams. I suggest everybody out there, go check it out. It's really exciting. And we even have our sponsor, BST.com, on our site out there. So, Jack, if you get a chance, I don't know if you've been there yet, if you want some latest news, if you want to see some great personal information on the players that you follow, they're all right there on Instagram. So, Jack, we're going to go ahead and take a real quick break, and we'll be right back on the other side with more sports for you guys, more that you can handle, Jack. So we'll go ahead and we'll get that going, and hopefully, God willing, and how does the saying go? God willing, and the river don't rise, Jack. We'll be right back right after this.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Oh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on every Sunday. Well, on every Sunday and every Wednesday through Sunday, too, Jack.
Mac, wait. It's Sunday already. I know I'm a little out of it today, but I didn't think I missed a bit. It's actually Sunday. I didn't realize.
I know. We don't just do Sunday, Jack. What the heck is going on?
Well, on every Sunday. That's accurate, but you were accurate.
Yes, we are. We're accurate if nothing else, Jack. Every Wednesday through Sunday from 8 to 10 a.m., Jack. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. We had the Philly sports guy on earlier. I call him Jamie Pags, with some great Philadelphia information. And we cover all the Northeast, no matter what fans we are.
You can't wait till Sunday, Mac. That's why you're looking ahead. You can't wait for those games.
I can't, Jack. It's going to be some great games. I mean, a lot of things are happening, especially in the Northeast, with Buffalo, the Giants. I mean, we'll see if the Jets still can go winless. I mean, how exciting can it be? You know, I mean, yeah, and New England's making a drive. I don't care what anybody says. You can't count out New England as long as you got
Let
a
me
guy.
tell you, New England is 6-6. If they finish the year 8-8 and don't have a losing record, I don't consider it a bad year. I don't consider it a
Me
step
either.
back. If
And
they
something,
could even
I
go
mean,
8-8.
this may be the best coaching job Bill Belichick has done since maybe the first couple of years with Tom Brady. I mean, he's done an unbelievable job for what he has over there, without no stars at all. I mean, you can call Cam Newton a past star, but he's sure not a star anymore. And I mean, what he's done with that team has been unbelievable. Defensively, special teams, preparing for games. I mean, the man is, you just can't take it away from him. I don't care what anybody says.
No.
Bill Belichick is in the top 3 coaches of all time, and there's no doubt about that. So, I mean, we got some great things coming up all week, Jack. I'll remind everybody at the end of the show, but tomorrow we got the Iceman John Scully on, great boxing insider. I mean, knows everything from every angle, boxing to analyzing to training, and he's trained a few champions in his time. Right now, he's one of the trainers with Artur Beterbiev. He's a light heavyweight champion, at least in one of the divisions, if I'm correct, Jack. I don't think he owns all of them.
Yeah.
At least in one of the sanctioned bodies, or however you want to say, division.
Every division, for the most part, has multiple champions. It's the way it goes in boxing. If there's ever a unified champion, he's going to be stripped of one of the titles sooner rather than later. So,
and Jack,
there's no such thing as one champion per division anymore.
Has that hurt boxing? I mean, so many divisions now. I know I've asked this question of so many people, and of course, most people will say yes. I mean, you got different divisions, you got different promoters. It's harder to put together big fights, pay-per-view, the whole 9 yards. Everybody's looking for the money instead of putting boxing out there and hoping they draw more fans and it becomes popular again. It seems to me that they're working against themselves.
I think we've become oblivious to all these titles and we don't really pay attention. We want good fights. I mean, a title is worthwhile and it gives a fight a marketability and it gives the top dog a reason to fight someone else. It does mean opportunities for guys who normally wouldn't get them if there was only one championship on the line. But take, for example, last Saturday night, Errol Spence beats Danny Garcia. All anyone talked about afterwards was Errol Spence against Terrence Crawford. That's the one fight they want to see. They're not sure which welterweight titles it would be for. I mean, Errol Spence defended his IBF and I think it was WBA welterweight title against Danny Garcia. But people really didn't care so much for what titles were on the line there. They just want to see good fights. That's all it comes down to. If Tyson Fury's to fight Anthony Joshua and some other heavyweights hold a version of the title, no one would care about it. They just want to see the best fights.
I agree. So what is the big deal of, after Fury wins the title, what's the big deal of matching him up with Joshua right away to get that big fight? And instead of going through all these contests of trying to position yourself at what you want to do before this happens. I understand there's mandatory fights, Jack. I know that. I know boxing has certain mandatory fights that the champions have got to defend their title against. But shouldn't this be already? Shouldn't this already Fury and Joshua fighting each other?
Yeah, but you want to know something? They're given a chance, basically an excuse. In the case of Anthony Joshua, this Saturday he's fighting Kurbet Pulev. Okay, supposedly it's a mandatory title defense for his IBF title. So he has to fulfill that obligation or be stripped of that IBF title. But in reality, he doesn't need any letters next to his name, an IBF title or a WBA title or whatever, a WBO title, because the big fight, if he fights Tyson Fury and beats him, he's got all the power. He'd be considered the real world heavyweight champion.
Right.
But they use that as an excuse to avoid an opponent who's a serious threat, who might be able to beat them. And this way they could fight lesser guys, still get some good paydays in, and eventually get around to the match everyone wants to see it and maximize their potential earnings in the meantime.
Talk about a sport that hurts itself. I don't
It does.
So go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
No. Usually the big fights do get made, but sometimes they slip through the cracks. Okay,
Right.
Take Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe. It slipped through the cracks. It just never got made. Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather. That was made about 5 years after it should have been made.
Yeah.
And even though they set all records for pay-per-view and so on, the point is you didn't get both guys at the top of their game at their very best. So that's what happened with boxing, unfortunately.
Yeah, could have been a legendary fight instead of what it was. So let's get this day in sports history, Jack, where we get to look at all the events and birthdays that come up today. Not a lot of birthdays today, but we got a lot of events, Jack. In 1934, the New York Giants defeat the Bears 30-13. Talk about two legendary organizations, Jack. I mean, the Giants have a long history of winning. The Bears have a long history of winning. But back in 1934, the Giants got the best of the Bears.
Like you said, two legendary franchises.
Yeah, definitely,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Especially the Chicago Bears with Papa, Papa Bear, George Halas. Yeah,
incredible athlete, coach, GM, and owner. In 1982, the World Boxing Council reduces the length of a fight from 15 to 12 rounds and allows refs to do an order standing 8 count to the fighter in trouble.
Let me tell you something. I'm not complaining. Jose Suleiman, the president of the WBC, he thought it would help in safety. This is after Dooku Kim tragically died in the fight with Ray Mancini when he got stopped in the 14th round. Even though the evidence in itself doesn't show 12-round fights make it safer, logic tells you you're going to take 3 less blows. Blows for 3 less rounds. As far as long-term damage, boxing hasn't gotten as much safe as it should have, and I'm going to tell you why. You see fights today, referees are still letting fights go on too long. Cornermen are completely inept. They let their fighter, who has no realistic chance of winning, come out round after round and take a pounding. Doctors aren't stopping the fights between rounds. Commissions aren't getting involved. We see so many one-sided fights. And the criteria is always, well, as long as the fighter can defend himself and has a chance in this punching back. Meanwhile, they're taking a ferocious beating in there. And it's sickening the amount of fights that still go on too long, even with the ring fatalities we've had.
I can't remember the fighter if it was, I'm not even sure if it was boxing. It was a boxer in MMA where a fighter actually said he did not want to fight anymore. He was done. And the corner actually made him go back in. That's good morning from our friend Keith Angle over at TGI Sports Talk. Regular guest with us on Friday. It's good to see that he's watching the show. So let's go on next.
That Patriot insignia was cute, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. He has that. Yeah, yes, he does. He loves his Patriots. In 1984, Eric Dickerson rushes for 2,105 yards. Listen, the time the Rams had Eric Dickerson, that was their offense, Jack. That was their offense. They really didn't pass the ball that much. He was their whole game. And I don't know if you remember watching him in his prime with the Rams.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, the man was unbelievable, strong, fast, great moves. And, man, they fed him like they fed nobody else, Jack.
I mean, you can make a case for Eric Dickerson being the greatest running back in the history of the NFL. I know people are partial to Jim Brown, and I'm not saying Jim Brown wasn't. Eric Dickerson came along later. It was a different era. But my own personal opinion, Eric Dickerson was a better running back than Sanders, Peyton. Simpson. I mean, he was phenomenal, Eric Dickerson. I mean, he could break off explosive runs. He was a workhorse when you needed him to be. I mean, the full package. I mean, just absolutely sensational.
Yeah, I when I remember watching him play, I don't remember the quarterback dropping back too much at all. And speaking of receivers and dropping back to pass, in 1985, Jerry Rice begins a streak of 100 games with a reception. Jack, a lot of people think not only the greatest wide receiver in history, but one of the greatest players in history, Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice's workouts were phenomenal, the way he'd do his hill running and so on. And he played into an advanced age. And you got guys who are faster, more explosive, can make a bigger play than Jerry Rice, but no one was as consistently excellent as Jerry Rice. I mean, game in, game out. His consistency was absolutely the greatest of any wide receiver of all time. And that's why many people consider him the best receiver ever.
Yeah, I mean, them slants he ran were unbelievable. He catch it in between the guys, whether Montana or Steve Young was the quarterback. I mean, listen, I can't think of a better wide receiver than Jerry Rice. I can think of receivers almost as good as Jerry Rice, but nobody better.
I love the explosiveness of Randy Moss. That myself. When Randy Moss was at his absolute best, I mean, I absolutely love what Randy Moss brought to the table. He was sensational. Let's say you're going to throw a Hail Mary in the end zone. You want Randy Moss there because you could put 4 guys on him and Randy Moss has a good chance to come down with the ball. But like I said, for pure consistency, Jerry Rice is the guy.
And someone else that we don't talk about enough, I think, Steve Largent with Seattle. He was on bad teams, but the man is a Hall of Famer. And if you want to throw the ball to somebody that's going to catch it no matter where on the field he is, not a lot of speed either with him, Jack, but he could catch everything. Steve Largent.
I mean, there's so many great ones. And if we go back before them, Lance Allworth with the San Diego Chargers was a lightning bolt. Otis Taylor on the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, even though they would be considered old timers today, guys from 50 years ago, they play in today's NFL and be absolutely outstanding.
There's no doubt about that. In 1987, Larry Bird ends the streak of 59 consecutive free throws, Jack.
You know, I got to Google up what the record is now. Because that's a trivia question you could have gotten by me. It wouldn't have been Larry Bird. My guess would be either Calvin Murphy or Rick Barry, the most consecutive foul shots, and I think it was something around 88.
Yeah.
I'm just in the ballpark, but I think it's between one of them. Rick Barry or Calvin Murphy. Rick Barry used to do the underhand foul shot.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah.
I think
amazing how they get that many in a row.
Didn't Shaq try that a couple times because he couldn't make
everyone tried it. The big guys who didn't have luck, like even Wilt Still Chamberlain, they tried different angles. Wilt's 100-point game, that he had. What people don't realize, Wilt Chamberlain was a terrible foul shooter, awful. Okay. And I heard it was a mental block because Elgin Baylor, who was his teammate on the Lakers for a little while, said he saw Wilt in practice make like 15 in a row. But once the game began, he couldn't make the shots. Elgin Baylor felt it was all mental. But Wilt Chamberlain in that 100-point game, he went to the foul line 32 times and made 28 out of 32 foul shots. So talk about being in the zone. I mean, that's excellent for anyone. That's close to 90%.
Yeah, definitely. Larry Bird, to me, Jack, playing, his position at, I think it was small forward, because I think McHale played big forward, if I'm not mistaken. The man had eyes in the back of his head. I mean, the point guard didn't run that offense. Larry Bird did. And what was incredible about him was the way he could fake the pass and make a shot from anywhere on the court, underneath, behind the backboard, from 3-point. He was, 3-point champion a couple of times. I mean, he had touch. Yeah, I mean, he looked like he could play on the Globetrotters for God's sakes. If you ever watch the videos on him.
Oh, yeah, Larry Bird would like to torture players. I think Sean Kemp, outstanding player with the Seattle Supersonics, was telling a story that he was in Indiana and he broke some of Larry Bird's high school records. And now he gets on the court as a rookie. He's going against Larry Bird, and he says, "Oh, you're the high school kid who broke my records." And then he's telling Sean Kemp what moves he's going to put on, exactly what he's going to do, which he did with other players. I'm going to go to my left, my right, then I'm going to fade away and take a jump shot. I'm going to go to the corner, and then I'm going to turn around, and shoot with my right hand, left hand. And he did all that. He told him exactly what he was going to do, and he would do it and execute it. One of the great trash talkers in the NBA was Larry Bird, but Michael Jordan said it was a good type of trash talking.
Yeah. I mean, they try to compare Magic Johnson with Larry Bird, two different positions. Magic Johnson was about the same size as Larry Bird. I think Johnson was 6'9", one of the biggest, point guards in history, really, an unbelievable point guard. But he was more of a drive to the basket, dish off, where Larry Bird could pass underneath while playing underneath. And I think he had a better shot than Magic Johnson, even though Magic Johnson is great too. So that has to come from the college game, Jack, when they went up against each other.
Yeah.
So in 1988, the New York Yankees signed a contract with MSG for $500 million, Jack. They're the ones that I think they still carry or is it the Yes Network that carries them now, right? The Yes Network carries the Yankees.
Yes Network now, yeah. 500 million would be peanuts in today's market. Gary Cole's total deal was 324 million.
Right. So I mean, it's
what it is. The landscape has changed. Yeah.
I mean, how much was 500 million back then in 1988? Maybe worth twice that now, Jack. I'm not sure, but the Yankees were very smart on the George Steinbrenner. He was one of the first ones to do it. Ticked a lot of owners off, signing contracts for their own network. People did eventually catch on, and they do it. But he ticked a lot of owners off when he first did that, Jack.
Yeah, well, George Steinbrenner wasn't popular because he'd lay out the big money for free agents. And the other owners didn't like being forced to keep up with him because it cost them money. And the owners, I mean, the bottom line, as competitive as some of the owners are, and I believe the vast majority owners absolutely want to win, and some of them are willing to lose money to win. Kudos to them for doing that. To some, it's a business, first and foremost.
Right.
And winning means more money, okay? So they want to win more for the financial aspects than they will for the sport of it. Now, Steve Cohen supposedly, I don't know him, but supposedly he grew up a Met fan. He has a passion, and he wants to win as a fan more than anything. But I'm also sure he knows what the bottom line is going to be. If the Mets, go to the World Series, the buzz it's going to create and so on. So, yeah, but George Steinbrenner, he really wanted to win first and foremost because he had this crazy competitive drive. But it was also a business there. It's funny, Mac. You take these owners like George Steinbrenner and Jerry Jones. They give the image that no one wants to win more than them. But they go a long stretch without winning. Steinbrenner didn't go to the World Series for 15 years, from 1981 to 1996. Maybe he would have gone in 94 if there wasn't a strike-shortened season. The Yanks were really good that year. And Jerry Jones hasn't been to a Super Bowl. What is it, about 25 years or so? Jerry Jones, no one wants to win more than Jerry Jones, yet they haven't, been to a Super Bowl in a quarter century or so.
Well, the comparisons between Jones and Steinbrenner, there's a lot of things that you can compare there, especially getting rid of coaches and managers and being involved. And I won't say that about Jones.
Not quite the same, no.
Well, let me finish that, because Jones did keep did keep Garrett around for quite a while. But they both like to meddle in their teams and the operations of their teams. They both are very. They were rich before they took over the teams. And a funny thing about that is that Jerry Jones was actually the one who had the contract for the food for Yankee Stadium, while Steinbrenner was the owner.
Oh,
so
didn't know that.
His business actually supplied the Yankees with the food there and vending. So I don't know if Jones learned anything from Steinbrenner back then or not. But as you're saying, it is strange that two people that want to win so bad, again, the Yankees did in the 90s do unbelievable, even when Steinbrenner was still the owner. But it is funny how somebody like Jerry Jones, who wants to win so bad, is out in the public all the time and says he wants to win so bad. But then you have somebody named Robert Kraft on the Patriots who did grow up a Patriots fan, and he's not in the media all the time telling everybody how much he wants to win. So pretty crazy there with the comparisons. Yeah. In 1990, O.J. Anderson becomes the 8th running back at that time to rush for 10,000 yards, Jack. That was the Super Bowl year when he was MVP.
I think that's what we remember him mostly for, being a giant MVP in that Super Bowl where they beat the Buffalo Bills 20-19. Arguably the greatest Super Bowl game of all time.
And, O.J. Anderson was a really good to great running back before he became a giant. The first year, I think he backed up Joe Morris while he was there before he took over as the premier back. O.J. Anderson, Bill Parcells said with that performance he put in the Super Bowl, you might have just gotten the Hall of Fame. Again, a great running back. Wait a minute, Jack. A great running back, being the 8th running back at that time to run for 10,000 yards, being a Super Bowl champion. Of course, he was an All-Pro with the Cardinals and also an MVP. I mean, I know that would be borderline. He probably will never get in. But at that time, Jack, maybe he should have been considered.
I think we use the word great a little too loosely. I never looked at O.J. Anderson as being a great running back. I looked at him as being an outstanding workhorse. You want him in the game, he's going to weaken the defenses. You run him, and so on. Excellent player, wonderful. But if you're talking about the Hall of Fame, I think the Hall of Fame has got to get reserved for what we were talking about before: Eric Dickerson, Barry Sanders, Walter Payton. On exceptions, a player who's not great but has had a long career and has compiled numbers you could put in, such as Frank Gore. I mean, when you look at Frank Gore's total numbers and the total amount of yardage he's, compiled, I think he's like number 3 of all time now. It's crazy. But Frank Gore is not a great running back, but he's compiled great numbers. He's been around a long time. So I'm okay with him going in the Hall of Fame, even though I wouldn't call him a great running back. I mean, Curtis Martin was a great running back.
Right.
He didn't do it as long. Another workhorse, John Riggins. Great running back, because at his peak he was unstoppable. O.J. Anderson, I guess if you watch the tape of the Super Bowl game, you could say he was kind of unstoppable that game on the biggest stage. But when you talk about Hall of Fame, I'm not as enthusiastic about him as a Hall of Fame as you are, even though he was phenomenal at the biggest possible time in the Super Bowl.
Definitely. In 1992, the New Jersey Devils changed their colors, to black, red, and white. I don't know if that's an event or if it's just a nice thing. The New Jersey Devils, of course, have had a great run as a hockey franchise, especially when they had the big guys there, Jack. But I don't know, even though they still have those same colors today. That's how much
when Lou Lamoriello took over, their organization, he made things go for them. And when you talk about Martin Brodeur, their great goalie of the past, when the Philly fan was talking about one goalie making a difference, Martin Brodeur was one of the more underrated local athletes when you look at his great career that he had. And when we talk about local hockey teams, we tend to talk about the Rangers, number one, because of the tradition. We talk about the Islanders, but maybe because the Devils didn't make the playoffs this year, we don't mention them at all. But their franchise, there really has some history behind
Yeah,
them, the New Jersey Devils, and they should be considered a local team.
I agree, Jack. And we're probably going to put them in when we start covering hockey.
Yeah.
We're going to include them. In 1981, Eddie George wins the Heisman Trophy, Jack. What do you think about Eddie George? I mean, would you consider him like maybe a O.J. Anderson, or maybe O.J. Anderson a little bit better than him?
I thought you were going to see Derrick Henry.
No.
And so on. But not same team. But no, Eddie George was, an excellent back. What could I say? An
Right.
excellent back, and he would not explosive as far as running sweeps and so on. But one of the better straight ahead backs. I mean, you can't take anything away from him, Eddie George.
He got injured. I mean, he was a very tall running back. I think he was 6'4", 6'5".
I didn't realize he was that tall.
Yeah, very tall running back. In fact, we talked about Brandon Jacobs being a scoring machine as a running back. He had a couple 1,000-yard years. He said he watched Eddie George just to see how he moved in the open field, because of Eddie George, of course, if he broke that first line, he did have moves. He did have quickness for a big guy. Again, he got.
Didn't Brandon Jacobs have a bigger body?
Yes, he was a little bit heavier. I mean,
guys like Brandon Jacobs and Marshall Lynch were nearly unstoppable, if you had them run straight ahead.
Definitely. I mean, they ran you over just to run you over. So, 2013, the Bears retire Mike Ditka's jersey number 89. We talk about Mike Ditka, the coach. We really don't talk about Mike Ditka, the tight end who got in the Hall of Fame as, I guess, a tight end and a coach, but he was one of the first catching tight ends that really made a difference at that position, Jack.
Mike Ditka, as a player, he had good mentors as coaches, because after he left the Chicago Bears, he was part of the Dallas Cowboys. They're a Super Bowl winning team. And he was under Coach Tom Landry, and he developed a close friendship with Dan Reeves, who was a heck of a coach who went to, I think, 4 Super Bowls, maybe 3. I have to think a second. Dan Reeves didn't win any. Okay, right. I think he went to 3 with Denver. I think Reeves was the coach, 3 with Denver, and 1 with the Atlanta Falcons would make it 4. But you make a good point. Is Ditka more known as a coach or player? Because he was a heck of a tight end. I mean, he was you could argue he was one of the best in history. You might be able to make an argument on that. And certainly as a coach, I mean, he was head coach of one of the greatest, if not the greatest team in NFL history, the 1985 Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and during the 80s, Jack, he was always in the playoffs. I mean, that kind of fell apart between him and Buddy Ryan, but he's still, the Chicago Bears were always, at that time in the 80s, when San Fran, the Giants, and the Redskins were probably the best teams in the NFL. They won in 85, and they were always there knocking on the door. So, great coach, great tight end.
And great at endorsing products too, Mac.
Yeah, now he is.
Yeah.
In birthdays, 1942, another Chicago Bear, arguably, you could say the greatest middle linebacker of all time, Dick Butkus, was born in 1942, Jack.
A wrecking crew.
My God.
He would wreck offenses.
I mean, the dude was just nasty and mean. I mean, he was something else.
Reckless abandon, the way he would play.
Oh my God, everybody hated playing that man. And the other birthday I want to bring up was from yesterday. We really didn't have a lot of famous birthdays from the list I looked at, but Mike Mussina was 51. Jack, maybe the most unlucky pitcher in baseball when it came to the Yankees. I mean, the man was great with the Yankees, and I don't think he ever made it to the World Series, if I'm correct.
No, he didn't. He came, and he also came 1 out from getting a perfect game. Carl
Yeah.
Everett broke up his perfect game at Fenway Park. He won 270 games over his career, and it didn't look like he was ever going to make it into the Hall of Fame. Okay, he didn't get a lot of support in the beginning, but eventually it became around and he got inducted into Cooperstown. And he didn't go in as either an Oriole or Yankee because he had 9 years with Baltimore, 7 with the Yankees, and he felt it wouldn't have been quite right to go in that way. I think it was 10 with Baltimore, 8 with the Yankees. He signed a 6-year deal with the Yankees, and then after that, a 2-year deal. Mike Mussina was one of the great free agent signings for the Yankees because in his 8 years there, he gave them 7 really outstanding years.
Great pitcher control, and what a breaking balls that man. That man could start a breaking ball at over your head and would drop in for a strike. Unbelievable pitcher. So, Jack, that's gonna close us down for today. Tomorrow, folks, if you stick around, we'll be back tomorrow, 8 to 10 a.m. We're gonna have on our boxing expert, John Scully, some more great sports updates for you. We might even have a surprise for you that we're not even going to talk about right now because we want to give it away.
We're having on a special boxing guest.
Yes, we are. So
I mention his name. I'm unlike you, Mac. You should have promoted the heck out of who we're having on. Instead of keeping it as a cast, it's a surprise for Scully. Scully might sleep late and might not even come on. And we lose people because you don't want to mention the name. But we're having a well-known boxer on tomorrow.
Yes, we will. So, folks, have a great day today. We'll see you tomorrow at 8 to 10 a.m. And, Jack, you have a good day, too.